All right, we're back to our regular scheduled programming. It's Weather for Weather Geeks on this Wednesday evening. Hopefully you got a chance to check out my annual winter forecast last evening. If you have not checked that out yet, go to my YouTube channel and be sure and watch that video. It's a long one, but if you're watching this video, chances are you kind of like geeky, nerdy, detailed weather videos, so be sure and check it out. I'll just quickly review some of the highlights from the winter forecast. We think this winter is likely to get off to a fast start, and overall, the winter is more likely to be colder than average than warmer than the average. This may be especially the case, of course, in the month of December. We think the strongest odds favor near to somewhat below average temperatures for the winter as a whole. The strongest odds in terms of snowfall across eastern Ohio and western PA, and especially in our television viewing area, the strongest odds are for an actually pretty close to average winter in terms of total snow, and that would be a lot more than some of our recent winters, because of course we've been way below average for the last few years. We think there's about a 30% chance of it being a less snowy than average winter, and about a 25% chance of it being a snowier than average winter. And keep in mind, we get our official observations, of course, at the Youngstown Warren Airport in Trumbull County. The average annual or seasonal snowfall there is about 65 to 67 inches. We haven't even come close to that number over the last few winters. So some highlights for the upcoming winter season. We think this probably will be the snowiest since 2021, 2022, but again, since then, the numbers have been pretty paltry, so that's not exactly a real strong statement, but I think we'll be within shouting distance of average in terms of snowfall. And, the confidence is high that this is going to be a cold December. One of the highest confidence long-range forecasts that I've made in quite some time. I think the first month of meteorological winter is likely to be pretty darn cold compared to the average. It may be the coldest month compared to the average of the entire winter. It may be the coldest month overall of the entire winter, not even compared to average, just in the absolutes. It may be even colder than January, which is climatologically speaking, of course, the coldest month of the year. Now, the back half of winter, it's a little bit of a tougher forecast. We could see where there's a pretty good thaw during the last half of winter. If La Nina is left up to its own devices, it tends to promote warmer than average temperatures deep into the winter. But the polar vortex might have different ideas if there are more disruptions to the polar vortex like we are expecting early in the season. If we get another disruption later in the season, all bets are off, and the cold could certainly stick around for a good chunk of the latter half of winter. All right, it was appropriate that I did the annual winter forecast last evening because we were just getting finished with the first snow of the year. Between Monday and Tuesday, we registered 2.1 inches worth of snow at the Youngstown Warren Airport. With our lake effect, we had some amounts that ranged from about 7 or 8 inches in Southington, very near the Portage County line, and then another maxima was in northeastern Mercer County, 5, 6, 7 inches, pretty common up towards New Lebanon, especially crossing the border over into Venango County, Pennsylvania. Those were the real hot spots with the lake effect. But no snow out there this evening. A couple of snow greens were around earlier on today, a couple of raindrops, a couple of sprinkles this afternoon. Just about done with any passing residual rain showers in western PA this evening, and the sky cover is going to be important. Now, the sky has cleared to the south and west of Youngstown, still pretty cloudy locally. It's going to take a little while for those clouds to clear out, and the reason why that's important is because you probably have seen at this point the dramatic northern lights pictures from some very far south latitudes last evening. All the way down to the Gulf Coast and places like Arizona even, the northern lights were seen. Now, this geomagnetic storm probably did peak last night. That's these red bars right here. This was last evening. This was later at night. The geomagnetic activity did wane during the daylight hours today, briefly spiking around mid-afternoon. And while these numbers are still elevated, this geomagnetic storm is still ongoing, it probably did peak last evening. But we're going to keep an eye on things for the next few hours because these things are fickle, they're hard to predict, and it's more of a nowcasting situation where we just have to, minute by minute and hour by hour, just keep an eye on how things are going. But this is classified as a strong to almost severe tropical geomagnetic storm out there again tonight. And when you see a K index value up around 7 to 8, that means the northern lights can start to be seen all the way down into the Ohio Valley and even low on the horizon pretty far to the south, down into the southern United States and all the way to the Gulf Coast. Again, I think this probably peaked last evening, but it's going to be possible to see some color out there tonight, especially on the northern horizon. And, if you're going to try to check this out, if we do get lucky, the best method of viewing these actually is not necessarily with the naked eye. It's with your camera phone, or an old-fashioned point-and-shoot camera. If you're using a smartphone camera, put your camera in night mode, and that seems to generate the best results as far as viewing the colors. The clouds, again, will clear overnight tonight. I've gotten some questions why all these instances of the northern lights over the last couple of years. We had some very dramatic northern lights sightings last May in 2024, and about a year ago last fall we also had pretty prominent northern lights. These solar cycles, these are naturally occurring cycles that our sun goes through that repeat about every 11 years. And sometimes the sun gets very quiet. That's a solar minimum, in which there's not many sunspots on the sun's face. There's not much geomagnetic activity. Solar flares aren't being ejected from the sun with any regularity. And then you have solar maximums, in which it's kind of the opposite. The sun is very busy. We're just probably past a solar maximum right now. It probably occurred last year or earlier this year, but we're still in that crescendo part of the curve here. Even though we're just past the peak, probably we're still seeing high solar activity. We're on our way to the solar minimum probably early in the 2030s, but when you have a solar maximum, you can get a lot of geomagnetic activity, and if conditions are right and you get lucky, you can see the northern lights a lot. And this particular cycle has outperformed expectations. You can see the observations here are higher than the predicted values in terms of the amount of solar activity. So this is a particularly robust episode of the maximum solar activity. All right, so our weather here on Earth over the next couple of days, pretty quiet, breezy on Thursday. High pressure just to our south will give us a good deal of sun. May turn a little bit cloudy for a time on Friday, but still not a bad day. Get up to about 50 Friday afternoon. As we zoom forward to the weekend, clouds will increase Saturday morning as a warm front lifts in. It's going to get pretty balmy on Saturday for one day, and really just a handful of hours. I think it'll be pretty chilly Saturday morning, but by late in the afternoon and early in the evening on Saturday, we might get to 60 or better in some spots. That will come at with a price, though, because I think the showers will become increasingly likely as we go into late in the day Saturday, and especially into Saturday night. Wanted to talk about the longer range at the end of this video. We talked about the winter forecast last evening, and a key part of the winter forecast is this idea of a cold December. Let's show you, looking down on the North Pole here, some long-range modeling from the European. This is what we call the European weeklies. I'm going to fast forward here to the very start of the month of December. What we're looking at here are the anomalies in the mid-levels of the atmosphere. And when you start to see oranges and reds up here in the eastern Pacific and up into Alaska, and the blue colors coming down into the U.S., this is a cold-looking weather map. This means ridging is going on near Alaska and across the western part of North America, and when ridging occurs out there, that can poke the polar vortex, and you can see waves of cold coming southward downstream of that ridge into eastern Canada, into much of the mainland U.S. And, this is pretty classic La Nina stuff. This happens in La Nina winters, but we have some extra things going on, it looks like, this year with regards to our tropical forcing. In other words, if you watched my winter video last evening, I talked about the MJO, the Madden-Julian Oscillation, getting into a favorable phase way out in the western Pacific to cause that jet stream buckle. We may have some really interesting shenanigans with the polar vortex, maybe weakening quite a bit. Very unusual for this early in the season. If that does transpire, that would help this buckling of the jet stream and the delivery of cold air into the U.S. So everything seems to be lining up for a fast start to the winter season and an end to 2025. Now, does the cold last all of December? That's a lower confidence thing at this point, but at least at times, I think December is going to be pretty darn cold. In the meantime, I'll wrap things up on this Wednesday evening. Thanks for watching Weather for Weather Geeks. We'll talk more about the short range and the long range coming up on Thursday. See you then.